Hi everyone, it's Hans here, the founder of Cappuccino, and welcome to this latest episode of Flat Whites and Insights, a podcast created to allow a space for open, honest and vulnerable conversations with real people, all over a beautiful cup of coffee. We're here in my home, so I'll be providing the flat whites, and my guests, they'll be providing the insights. So grab a coffee for yourselves, take a moment, and I hope you enjoy this latest conversation. Thank you, take care, and enjoy. Rob, hi. Thank you for taking the time to come over to join me for a conversation.
Pleasure.
So we kind of connected through Instagram, a common interest of coffee. I'm sure we're going to touch on that. We'll definitely get into that. But for those who don't know you, you want to just give a brief, and for myself as well, really, about who you are and kind of a bit of a background and why you wanted to come on the podcast.
Yeah, sure. My name's Rob. Approaching 40, unfortunately. I know I don't look it, but I've had my mental health struggles, which we've connected to over messages as well. It's obviously one of those things especially with guys, with men, that is a bit still of a taboo, which it shouldn't be, and that's why I'm here today, is because I feel that it's very important, and an important message to give out to everybody. But for the past 17, 18 years, I've been working for British Airways in engineering. We touched on it earlier on off camera. And a lot of my reasons to leave that, and it was a good job, I was doing well, was my own mental health, and I had to make that decision, especially with COVID making so many people redundant, and fortunately I kept my job because of my qualifications, but the way that it was handled after there was just diabolical, and I'd raised the mental health issue many a time with managers, and they pushed that, it's okay to not be okay, and I have to be honest and say that wasn't the case. So anyway, I decided that enough's enough with that, and for my own mental health, my family, which was important as well, because I was in a very dark place with that. I now work for a global supply chain company dealing with air freight, sea freight, road freight, everything really, military, things like that. So that's a new thing to get my head round, but it's fun and I enjoy it.
No, amazing. No, thank you for that. And probably it's nice to feel like learning new things again, maybe, and not to say that you weren't in your old job. It's 17 years is a long time in any organisation, in any business. So maybe, and I think we touched on it just before we hit record as well, about when you've been somewhere so long, or when something just feels part of your identity, it feels like that is who you are. You almost maybe don't realise how, like, maybe you forget why am I doing this, or what is keeping me here? Is it just habit or being comfortable? And maybe, like you say, it's maybe the pandemic, and it took seeing those changes, and I guess true colours may be shown in terms of organisations. Everyone, nowadays everyone kind of says it's okay not to be okay, and this and the other, but is that really being shown by action? So
that's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head, and that was where, ironically, I was furloughed for, I think the first lot was 6 weeks, and then 4 weeks, and then it started to tail off. But it gave me time, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this, is it was like a big pause button on the whole world. Some people loved it. I was petrified for the future because I didn't know what was going to happen with my job. So it was a bit like I didn't enjoy not being at work, so I couldn't hear anything. But it gave me that chance to really reevaluate and look at what is important to me. Me and my wife had not long had a baby in September 2019, and I realised that I wasn't spending any time with her. So when when it got to it, I thought, well, hang on a minute, I quite enjoyed being at home. I was working at Heathrow. I lived near Reading, so it was like every time I was getting off, I'd done 7 days at work, various shifts, and I was just like burnt out.
Yeah.
And then I had to make that decision, and it was hard. It was hard, and luckily my wife's very understanding, and she used to work for BA as well. She got made redundant.
Okay.
So it was a bit like...
I can imagine even that, one of you keeping the job, one of you not. It's almost that...
Do I want to jump? Do I
you go, yeah.
And not that money's everything, but I was earning good money that sustained my family and gave us a roof over our heads and food on the table, you know, the normal stuff that you would think about. But an opportunity came my way, and I'm a strong believer in everything happens for a reason and everything will work out in the end.
Yeah.
What happens will pass.
Yeah.
And it presented itself in a way I thought, I can't ignore this. And I just grabbed it with both hands and put my notice in at BA, and there I am. So I'm a year and a half into my new career now. I had done stuff with the logistics side before with BA, so it was kind of like not alien to me. So I was a bit hang on, this is quite familiar. I can sort of transition from what I was doing before into that. So it was good.
No, amazing. And I think you mentioned there something, as you say, it's kind of having the child. Obviously, I don't have kids myself, but I hear from so many people that it's almost that day you become a parent. It's almost like your priorities, everything shifts suddenly from you being the most important person. Suddenly there's someone else and something else in your own. And I know we kind of spoke with camera as well that that's not your first child. So being a parent, and when you are, as you say, if you're burnt out and spending so much energy at work or things, or for me it was when I was doing my PhD, something I have touched on a lot, but for me I don't apologise for repeating it, because that is a big part of my story and who I am, and without that all happening, then I wouldn't be here, Cappuccino. And again, what you say, everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't have met the community of people I've met, and wouldn't be able to enjoy living with my passions, and like I've fallen into now football, coffee, mental health, and I'm that, rather than being in the labs doing research, driven by an idea of what I thought was important, and that was people, I don't know, seeing me achieve and this, that, and the other. So
that pressure it's funny you should say that, because that was something I was going to ask you, is with that pressure almost to perform in a way, isn't it? So you're doing your PhD, chemistry, wasn't it?
Yeah, chemistry, yeah.
Did you feel that you had committed to something, so you had to see it through?
I think I had, particularly with the PhD, and I think it's interesting, I've had this conversation before, because if it was just a job, then maybe like you don't complete a job, like, the job is there, but because there was a qualification attached, and because there was, funding that the professor had applied for and had got it, and because it was almost, you'd started it, and will I not get this qualification? And for me as well, a lot of that was self-induced. I put that on myself, because even from when I was starting university in first year, and it was great, I loved my time at uni, but I went there with the intention of, I'm going to go do a PhD after. That was what I was focused on. So I didn't even explore other careers. I didn't explore it because I knew I didn't want to. I was like, well, what's the point? Because I know I want to do this. Yeah. And then probably as well with the nature of a chemistry PhD or any PhD, it's so niche and so specific that you've got to really have a passion and love the subject. And I did. I was like, well, I'm getting a PhD, whatever, it's in chemistry, I know I can do that. So I probably didn't actually have a passion for the subject, the specific subject area I was doing. And that was where, when it then got difficult, that was when it became a challenge, and I burnt out because I wasn't loving what I was doing. I was just wanting to
get to that final
point. And what I would have then done, would I have been happy when I became doctor? Probably not. I'd have had my moment in the spotlight. I'd have had a short-term buzz, and then I would have been like, oh, am I going to spend the rest of my life in these labs and stuff now? So I'm actually grateful that I had the challenges in my first year, because I hadn't, if it had been maybe my 2 years in, I don't know if I'd have it would have been harder to then drop out because you put
You're
2
well
years of your
committed
life
by
in.
then.
Yeah. So, but no, it was that feeling like I'd let myself down, friends, family, especially because that was my identity at the time. That was who I was, and people from school to uni had known me as, that's what he is. He's the chemistry guy. Like
chemistry guy.
That was it. That was what I was known as.
And because you had set your sights and your goal on, it's the PhD, and that's it. Anything you're kind of blinkered, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure people watching this or listening to this would probably associate it with something that they've done, and it works in all ways, and that's the mental health aspect of it.
Yeah.
Is you don't realise you're putting your expectations up there when really you need to lower those expectations and do the goals, smaller goals as you go. And I found that was one of the techniques I used once I realised that I had depression and anxiety. Was okay, so let's look at the controllables. Control the controllables. Can you change the outcome of this? No.
Yeah.
What can you do to make it easier on you? This, and this. So do that then.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds easy, but it's like a habit, isn't it? You need to train your brain to say, well, hang on a minute. I'm worrying about something, especially with anxiety with me. Hold on a minute, I'm worrying about something that might not ever happen.
Yeah.
Why am I worrying about something? Because I'm preparing myself for a trauma.
Yeah. It's almost preparing yourself for the worst, and maybe having had maybe experiences or something happened before. It's almost like you're
accustomed
that
to
habit,
it.
as you say. That habit it is a habit of that kind of stress, or if you're used to stressful environments or being anxious. And I think, it's so true. The and you touch on kind of anxiety, depression. There is that something that kind of came out during the it's not.
I gained or got lumbered with.
Kind of when did you
when I first got
that,
it,
or when did
See, it's funny, and it's something I didn't really think about, but I know the first time that I felt that I wasn't right was probably around 13, 14.
Okay.
My mum and dad divorced when I was 4 or 5. Messy divorce, like most are. I didn't see an awful lot of my dad. Not because it was him. My mum remarried, so I had my stepdad, who I got on with better when I'd moved out than I did when I lived there. There probably was resentment there on both sides, but that's by the by. But I remember specifically around 13 feeling like I wasn't right. And I remember feeling this overwhelming sense of, I have to earn the love. I feel like I have to conform and be this person that my mum wanted me to be, or whatever. And, I mean, my childhood wasn't the best of childhoods. It was very lonely. I was very much, I had siblings, but I was very much like fending for myself, which then moved on into later life, and I dealt with it throughout my life, and I just did things to kind of make me happy, really. And so I was already weaning myself without needing medication or anything like that. But then moving in with my dad when I was 18, 19, I then started to work on the airport. So I started to do what I wanted to do. So it's kind of like the distraction. I was blinkered from the distraction, so I was happy. I was going on holiday with my dad. I was, doing things like that I wanted to do. Had some serious relationships, got engaged a couple of times, things like that. And then transitioning to it, I think maybe you were going to ask this as well. I think my lowest bit was probably when I separated from my then wife, that I'd been with for 10 years, had 2 children with, who were 4 and 7 at the time. Knew that I wanted to get divorced for quite some time, but what I didn't see at the time was abuse on me, was stopping me from doing it. And that moment that I left, it all hell broke loose because she didn't let me see my children.
Yeah.
Divorce was incredibly messy and long, and yeah, so not seeing my kids was a whole new depression and anxiety, because I didn't even know if they were alive. I'd had no contact. She blocked me on everything. I knew what school they went to, and I got in touch with the school and told them what was going on. My solicitor was sending her letters saying, you have to let him see the kids.
Yeah.
Every time it nearly got to court, she would bail, so it was costing me money because of court fees.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are where we are today, and just to make the story shorter, the children now live with me. They're under a protection order from the police. They live with me, and I've since remarried, and there's an awful lot of trauma on their side, so I'm almost having to coach them now. And
it's a lot. And
Yeah.
no, I can see even there as you're
it's hard
kind of talking about it.
That was a good 5-6 years ago as well, so
yeah.
it's still raw, but it's very common apparently. I mean, I've spoke to a lot of people and a lot of guys, and they've said that that's exactly what happened with them. So
yeah. No, it is something that and you mentioned as well almost your parents splitting when you were kind of 4, which is the age of your divorce when you split. So I guess there's almost that, as you say. I mean, I experiencing it from both the child and then being one of the couple who then split, and it's something that I mean I've mentioned on before. My parents split when I was about 10, and I had 2 younger sisters at the time, so they would have been like 8 and then 4. So it was something almost like growing up, and again we saw Dad like kind of every couple of weeks, but he wasn't at home. And then something I kind of say about is we're going to an all boys school, surrounded in a very male dominated environment, and then at home I was my mum and my 2 sisters, and as much as it's amicable between like, the parent, and I've got a good relationship with both my parents, but didn't and probably would say still maybe don't have a very like deep like kind of connection there.
I know what you're saying.
In terms of like I get on really well like with Dad, but we wouldn't necessarily talk about deep stuff, or I definitely didn't have that growing up, which was probably when I needed it.
No, that paternal...
If you know what I mean, that kind of father-son relationship.
I do, I totally get it. It's hard to explain. I mean, I talk to my dad a lot. I worked with my dad for a period of time, so like I was with all his mates at work, and I was just one of the boys. So it was great sort of seeing my dad in that bit. But I'd be doing my dad a disservice if I said he wasn't paternal, but I think my dad was very much what you're describing. I think my dad was very much trying to... How do you say
it's
this
like a
in
mate,
words?
like a friend.
Yeah,
like a friendship.
I got on with him, but and I could go to him with anything. But I felt that not growing up with him, I didn't have that father figure. And when I moved in with him, I was already an adult, really. So I'd gone through that adolescence and growing up, and those difficult things and things maybe that you would want to talk to your dad about. I didn't feel I could. It was awkward.
No, I feel very similar. You relate a lot, and I think we've mentioned there about father figure. It's something that I've kind of, in my therapy that I've kind of touched on. So I didn't know either of my granddads as well. So my dad's dad passed away, I think, just before I was born.
Wow.
I'm actually kind of named after him, which is cool. So Hans is like short for Johannes, and it's the German for John. He was John, my granddad. So which is nice actually. That there's that connection. So I was named after him, but never met him. And then my mum's dad, there are kind of pictures, but he actually had depression as well in his later life, and I don't have any real memories of him. Like there's pictures of us like at Christmas, me opening the presents, but I was very young,
you know nothing.
So I don't have any memories of either granddad and then dad not being there. And again, like I would say the same as you, would be doing a massive disservice to say my dad wasn't. So I feel like I don't like love him to bits, and I know he loves me as well. It's just that that kind of, maybe it's a generational thing, but also
Maybe.
I think that just not being there when you're growing up is the
that was the hardest bit.
Fault of his own. I mean, you've mentioned there about it wasn't your choice, and I never had the kind of, my parents, it was never that I wasn't seeing them or anything like that, but it was still probably twice a month I'd see my dad. So that's not the same as being there, like, you know,
when you wake up in the
after
morning,
school, or being there in the morning, and how was your day? How was this? And when we did see each other, then it felt like it was doing and list of activities and things, rather than that, how are you feeling? How are you this? Like that didn't really have that part of it.
No, and I think for me, what made it harder was, I think there was some overspill on my mum's part, that there was resentment towards my dad, which fine, that's fine, but it's none of my business. So I'm very mindful of that with my kids, that what I feel about their mum, I wouldn't tell them. I've told them the truth with everything, and unfortunately, because the police and social service were involved, there was quite a lot of questions. So, I've been quite open and honest with them. But with my mum, it would be hearing about your father. It was never your dad, father.
Okay.
So I was okay, it sounds very formal, but from that she would like, your dad's going on holiday again. It's like, so what? Like,
just that
you're
kind
not
of
married to
gossip.
him. Who cares? You know, and once I started to get some common interests with my dad, he took me to the Spanish Grand Prix in 1997, and that was it. I was hooked, petrol head from then on.
I saw even just this weekend.
I mean,
I saw on your Instagram. You're like,
posing in my
Formula 1 and all that. Yeah, there we go.
But and
that's great though to have.
Yeah, and we talk. That's actually quite a common theme when we talk, and he loves his cars and motor racing and stuff like that, and that's what, I kind of went with him because I wanted to spend time with my dad on his own. So it was kind of cool being with my dad, and I was like, this is cool. This is like something he enjoys doing. I guess it's like with my kids, when I endure them to watching Reading play on a season ticket, that's something that I hope that they.
That's cool. That
I wouldn't submit that to anyone. But,
you'll be playing us next year. You get to watch Wycombe Wanderers.
I've got to say, Reading ain't done good for my mental health the last few years. That's for sure. But no, it was. I kind of scrabbled around looking for the common interest with my dad, because I wanted to get to know him. And he had quite a story, and it was quite nice learning that. My dad then went on to remarry, and unfortunately he's now divorced again. So we're a right bunch. But he's left BA now, and he's retired effectively. So, and he's into his little models and things like that, which is really funny to like hear him sort of gush over it. And it's like, and he's talking to me as if I know about it. I'm like, Dad, it's brilliant.
It's lovely that it's something he really is passionate about.
Oh,
and wants to share. And I think that's great. But no, it's families. I think it's funny, and I think it's even just this conversation, you realise it's so common. Or you mentioned even about with the kids, seeing them in divorces, and I think it's interesting because society, or I found, and what I've struggled with, is never having the perfect family, like nuclear family. People say, where it's mum, dad, everyone together at Christmas. And I think the more and more I meet people and chat to people, it's like, does anyone does
anyone stay together anymore?
Or even just how many families is that the case?
Now.
It's almost. But you kind of grow up, or I know definitely when I was growing up, I would be envious of, say, if I was going to play at a mate's house after school or something, and both parents were there. Mum and dad are there, and like even that. So you don't. I now look back and I realise almost you were exposed to it, and it was more of a thing than I realised probably even at the time growing up.
So ironic that you say that, because that's exactly how I felt, and I was very conscious of that, and I think that's what drove me into the depression and anxiety. Because
I almost, sorry to interrupt, but I almost didn't want friends coming over to my house because I didn't want them to know. I didn't want them to know that my parents weren't there. Almost like a shame, almost in a way. Yeah,
it's exactly how I felt. It's so strange that you said that, but I remember being so conscious of it, especially at school. All my friends, their mum and dads were together. I was the only one that was from a broken family, as they like to call it. I hate that word, that terminology.
But I know what you mean.
But it's
how
it is.
People,
And and that was sort of quite upsetting, and I remember, remember it quite vividly. And I remember thinking, this isn't fair. I almost felt resentful with my mum and dad. And I'm like, why couldn't you make it work? And now I understand it
Yeah.
completely. But
no, as a kid, that's your perspective
Yeah,
of the world, and
I'm
you
on
don't
my own
understand.
here.
Or, I mean, thankfully, I never really kind of went into a position of blaming myself, but I can see why that would happen for children, or if they think, especially if, I don't know, they hear arguing at home, and then it's like, oh, the kid, or like you could see why a child might just feel like, oh, it's me,
my fault.
Yeah, but no, it's like I say, family is an interesting thing, and there is no nuclear family, I don't think, or certainly for me, that's such a. I don't want to say it's nice to hear about things. It's never nice to hear about people struggle, but it's almost reassuring for myself to be like, okay, everyone's got something. Everyone's families aren't all perfect. It's not that we're the only family that isn't quite the way. And actually, I'm very lucky that I'm still very close with my mum and my dad. Again, not necessarily maybe at that deeper level.
No.
Like I've got, and yeah, they would probably know this anyway, but if they're hearing this, like I've got, say, like my partner or friends that I would probably go to first to talk to before my family, whereas but that's just the way that they're people that I feel more comfortable to talk to, because we never maybe did growing up. It's not something that feels comfortable, so
and that's it. And I didn't feel that I had that safety to talk to my mum about I don't feel well, or my dad for that matter. But I know that my mum had depression and anxiety, and I wonder whether what I've got is hereditary, because I know that my other siblings have as well. So it's a bit like, sucks. But I spoke to my teacher once when I was about 13, 14, and I said, I don't feel happy. And they were like, oh, it might be because you're growing up and you're going through puberty and all these sorts of things. So I kind of just piggybacked on that and thought, oh yeah, that's what it is. Because I didn't understand.
Almost like growing pains, but like mental.
Yeah, my brain feels mushy, and I can't seem to like be happy. But yeah,
it's interesting though, and that's something where maybe, or I know, like my partner's a teacher, and now I think the conversation, frankly, there's a lot more education on it. It's a lot more kind of understood, and I think you're so much more than just a teacher. You're also like
a guidance
counselor, you're a parent. So it's, I think that is good that it is heading in the right way. But like we even said, circling back to near the start, like it's not just putting out statements and this. It's about what's the action, and do your staff feel valued and seen. And something I know you mentioned that you'd seen episode like 1 and 2, which came out just before we recorded this, and you mentioned that about. Me and Alex spoke quite a bit about the culture in the workplace and stuff. And for me, like it was his first office, but for me, having been in places where that's not been the case, PhD specifically, which I was part of the problem, should we say, because I was so closed off and narrow-minded. Like I need to achieve. So there might have been support open, but there was no way I was going to admit to needing it at that point in my life. It's just feeling valued and a part of something. But
it's so tough, isn't it?
It is tough, but. One thing, thank you so far. I think, again, talk about the family. I think there'll be a lot of people. A lot of people watching, listening that might think, oh, everyone's got these happy families. It's almost it's everyone's got something, and it's okay that if that's the case. But something, and obviously talking over coffee. A way that we connected. So we'll kind of bring it back to this. And I've got a question. So on Instagram, you are the Pirate Barista. Yeah. I can see your earring there. You got a little pirate earring. Don't worry, that didn't. There we go. That's your best side. Sorry, I've sat you this way.
I've got tattoos as well. I've got one there. Yeah. I've got one that you won't be able to see it as a galleon or a ship on the back.
So I guess I was going to ask, where did the name come from, or where did the obsession come from with pirates? Then?
So this is really funny because it kind of coincides with maybe I was in depression or anxiety when I was a lot younger than I thought. My last holiday that I went on with my mum and dad when they were together was Disney in Florida. Okay. And we went on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Yeah. Hooked. Excuse the pun, but I was absolutely hooked. I was like,
love that.
They're cool. I kind of like that they were just lawless renegades. I mean, probably not a good thing, a good role model to have, but I just thought, I like that. They're kind of free spirited, and it was, and I really remember that. And I was only like 4 or 5.
So it's like a proper like
it was like
vivid memory.
different, like different to normal. And then it moved into this is really, really stupid, but I'm going with it. Did you ever go to the Fort? Did you ever go to Fort Park in like early 90s?
I mean, I was born in 94, so
Oh,
I don't think I was around in the early 90s.
I feel old now.
Yeah, way to make no.
All my knees.
Have been, but that was when like, and to be honest, I'm not really big into rides and roller coasters and stuff, but went with like schoolmates, and when it was like the Saw ride was on there.
Oh, okay,
but
it
quite
was a long time
quite a
before
bit later. So no, to the early 90s.
But they had a pirate thing there. It was like you was on a boat and it would stop at these islands. If I remember this rightly, I might be wrong, but I do vividly remember a pirate got on the ship, on the boat, and then you come round and they had like this is really stupid, a pen, and they put a mark on your hand, and they're like, you've got the black spot, and it was like a pirate thing, and I got it, and no one else on this boat did, and I'm like already obsessed with pirates in the background.
So for you to be chosen,
I was like, that's it, that's what I am. That's what I am. And it kind of grew from there. It just become like, not an identity, but it was kind of like the films came out. I loved the films, skulls and all that sort of thing. I don't know.
I've seen like your coffee setup. I think you've got like kind of pirate flags.
That's right.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
And it was just one of those things that like I said, my childhood wasn't the best, but that was a happy time. It was something that was quite cool. So I think I pinned onto that as like I like that. And it sort of just adapted and went through life. And when it came to setting up my Instagram, I got a Sage Barista Express because I was watching. He's a drummer for a band called Stray from the Path, Craig Reynolds, and he's from Reading.
Okay.
And he had a Barista Express, and I thought, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So my poor wife was like,
oh, then that's not my partner. My partner doesn't drink coffee. At one point, I had 2 coffee machines, and the kitchen was smaller than this. We've now moved in, and it was like one of them's got to go. And I was like, "What? You or the machine?"
Exactly. It's, I'll catch you later.
Yeah. I'll see you later. But yeah, she still doesn't drink coffee. Yeah, it's. But then, sorry. Yeah. So you said. Yeah.
So it sort of projected.
When was that in terms of time frame?
This was just before. Was it before COVID? I can't remember now.
Kind of.
It just doesn't exist anymore, does it? But it was around COVID time, let's say that.
Yeah.
And I was already into my coffee. We'll get to that bit in a minute. But I really wanted to try and make proper coffee, you know, like how the baristas would do it or anything like that. But I was very conscious of I didn't want to step on toes. And my wife said, why don't you do an Instagram of like your progression and how you get on and like you'll probably open yourself up to a whole world. Well, here we are now, but you'll open yourself up to a world of people. And I was like, oh, I'm not really like that. Like I'm not like a showy look at me person. I don't deal well with that, and I'm quite critical of myself.
And I almost don't want a record of all the pores which at the time look good. When actually looking back at the old ones, you see the progression maybe. But
yeah, I do, and I think I put a post up the other day about that. Was look, don't worry about if your pores aren't particularly great or anything. It's if you enjoy it, and
that's what it's about.
And that's what I've always thought. I thought I want to try things and do that. But yeah, so I've created this Instagram, and I thought I don't want it to be Rob's Coffee or something like that. I thought, well, I'm obsessed with the pirate thing.
Go with that.
And I thought, oh, it's silly, innit? I'll do that. Didn't really think much about it, to be honest. And then it become like an identity. It became me. And I remember when we met at the London Coffee Festival, it was Pirate Barista, Cappuccino, and it's like I didn't even know your name.
No, I didn't know yours. There, it's funny how that's what I love about that coffee festival. And bringing that community together, and because we were part of Sage again, we were part of like the school of coffee, weren't we? We were kind of doing pours, and we were partnered up.
Because I've been chatting to Raj and Joe. Raj is Let's Code and Coffee, and Joe Home Barista Joe.
He's in Star Wars, isn't he?
He loves Star
Wars. He's got his little stormtrooper or something.
He does. And
but it's funny how you go off the names. So
and it was nice to meet them, and they got invited as well, and we were just chatting about things like that. We've got a little WhatsApp group that we chat about in now, and it's so supportive. And in fact, Joe was one of the first few people that I spoke to on Instagram. And I was dude, I've bought a chemistry set basically. What do I do with this? Like, and I've done this, tried this, and he was so good. And he was like, you want to try this and this and this. And then I started to like follow more people and get more followers. And I followed barista Chloe, and she was amazing. And she was like, oh, try this. And
she'll love getting a shout out. There you are. Influencer. I remember at London Coffee Festival, because on my ticket, I don't think I must have ticked a box or something.
It said influencer.
It said influencer.
I felt like such a.
Then when I was I then poured against Heidi up on stage.
Oh yeah.
And like Chloe was saying to me, she was like, "Oh, when they ask who you are and stuff, please just say, oh, I'm an influencer."
Yeah.
But yeah. There's so many great people that you.
It was a good day.
Yeah,
it really was a good day, and we met so many people, and I can't remember lots of them, but we sort of hung around, didn't we? And there was
kind of in a group. Yeah, it was nice.
I forget his name now, but there was a few people, but it was very. It was like it is a community.
Yeah,
and I thought, I quite like this. I quite like. And then when I saw what you were doing with Cappuccino, and I was like, whoa. That's completely like different to everything. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I can relate to you in so many ways. And I was like, I wonder how many people sort of like think about this. And so it was really cool meeting you. And finally we prepared up to go, weren't we?
We were on the machine.
We didn't listen to anything that was said.
No, we didn't.
We just thought,
it was when they was doing the espresso martinis and stuff after.
Mine looked rubbish.
No, it was a fun day, and I think I appreciate it as well. You saying that about it being something different, and I think it was something which, when I initially set it up, it wasn't going to be about mental health and everything, and I was just reviewing cafes because I started the page when I was signed off, kind of with my mental health, and I needed something to just a bit of a purpose, keep me busy, feel like this probably was fallout from me saying that I always felt like I needed to achieve and needed to be doing something, and so once the PhD stopped and once I lost that kind of identity, and I couldn't just be like sitting. I had about 6-7 months off, mental health time off, just to kind of just
start
exist
again.
A little bit, start again, and so it was just spending more time in cafes, just taking my book and this, that, and the other, and then it kind of grew, and I spoke a little bit about mental health because I just felt like that's. Be authentic with it. Like that is why I've started this page. Yeah. And for me, it was a kind of almost. So I don't necessarily journal. I know quite a lot of people journal and things. But for me, it was almost, and a very public one, but it was almost a way for me to get things out there and off my chest. Yeah. And not everyone would want to put things out publicly. I totally get that, but for me, it was a way to, if I wasn't having the best day, which still happens, of course. Right. Sometimes just getting out there and saying, I feel not rubbish. Feel a bit rubbish, but and just a way for me to express it rather than suppress it.
Yeah, I totally get you.
Because that's what I'd done for so long, and just it gives me like a space to do that, and even like the tagline, like kind of self-care is not selfish, and it's a reminder to myself more than anyone else. And that's where, and I know now, like doing this podcast, it's kind of it's taken steps and it's growing, but I'm very wary that. Well, because I don't get anything financially from this, but that means there's less pressure that if it starts to feel like a job and it starts to be too much, then I can like reel it in
just
a little
rein
bit,
it back.
There's no pressure on it, and I think that's important for me because I'm my nature. I know what I'm like. I'll get on a roll. Like I was just saying with you. I think over the May and June, I'm going to record 10 episodes, and they're like heavy conversations. So it's a lot working full time. So very wary that I need to protect myself as well.
Well, yeah, because you're revisiting tough times, and you don't want to flood your mind with things like that. I don't know about you. I'm not sure what your day-to-day coping mechanisms are, but I'll sort of go into mine. So if I feel, let's say anxiety is probably the best one. If I feel some anxiety coming, I now know. I can spot it. Yeah. If I see it coming, I start going through the processes. Like I said, what's my controllables? Yeah. Can I control this? What am I worrying about? Am I worrying about that my season tickets for Reading hadn't turned up yet. Not even joking. That happened last year, and I started to get obsessed with it. And I'm like, where are they? We're getting closer to the first game of the season. Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Anyway.
And what a season it was. Sorry.
Yeah, I wish they hadn't now.
but no, I know what you mean. Getting fixated on that
because
thing, and then almost
I'm not in control
that
of
seed
that.
kind of like grows, and you're like, every day that they don't arrive and stuff.
And that gremlin in your head goes, oh, you feel something. Right, I'm going to piggyback on that.
Yeah,
I'm going to ride that and make him feel bad. But I can spot it now. Yeah. So I can probably 7 out of 10 I can quash. Or some I just have to sit with for a period of time, deal with it, go through the motions with it, and then come out the backside of it. But you'll feel drained. You probably completely get this little episodes, don't matter how big or small that episode is, you feel like you've been beaten up. And you're tired. You cannot explain how tired you are. Something which I've ventured into and I couldn't do when I worked at BA, now this was ridiculous, was CBD. And I don't know whether you've ever tried it.
No.
I was like, I don't know about that. I'm not a druggie or anything like that. But when you do the sort of
I've seen it's quite common in coffees and things like that.
Yeah, so I thought I'm going to try CBD gummies. So I started to do, if I get a real anxiety attack I'll take a couple and then it will tail off. It doesn't get rid of it, but it makes me look at it from a different point of view and go, what are you doing?
Yeah, almost allows you to rationalise it a little bit.
Yeah, it gives me some resilience.
And I think that's the, certainly I find with anxiety, it's almost, or my partner definitely probably spots before myself, or she'll know when it's coming, or I'm burning out a little bit, or anxious because not really thinking rationally, or I'm quite a patient person, I'd say, but if I'm maybe pent up, or I'm stressed about something, or something, then every little thing I become quite irrational about. Yeah. Often little things like, or I don't know, people walking slowly on the pavement, let's say. I know that is a common thing that can wind people up, or
in the supermarket,
if I'm driving or in the supermarket, or if I need to, and even we'll be having a nice day out, and I do sometimes get that kind of my social battery can just go almost, like even we were in Marlow yesterday, just had like a nice day, had a picnic, had a bit of went for a coffee, sat, read our books and stuff, and then at one point I was just almost feeling like,
I'm ready to go
home now.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's almost a bit like, you imagine it almost like a child, or when they're like, can we go now? Can we go? But it's fair play, and that's something that Fred kind of understands and kind of notices. So
that's right.
If I'm kind of getting a bit fidgety, or we're sat down and I'm like starting to tidy up and everything, and she's like, are you ready to go home? But again, it's just acknowledging that and then not beating myself up about that, and just saying, look, we had a nice day, but it's not worth me being uncomfortable and sitting there
dealing with it, bottling it up
and not enjoying it, and just sat there. And it's something that probably maybe I did do when we were early on in the relationship, because I don't want to ruin her day out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't want to be a burden, do you?
No.
That's half the battle. Do you find that that tension build up when you get it? You try to control it. Are you at the point with your partner now where you could go, I feel a bit crap, and she gives you that space, or she just knows? Because my wife does. She'll and she struggles with mental health herself. So it's kind of like nice to know, but I totally get what you mean. Like right at the start of the relationship, you kind of don't want to admit it. You don't want to just it's like that. Because I'm a bit broken. Yeah, broken crayons still draw.
Yeah, there you go.
So
that's the thing. It's and it's interesting. I guess maybe slightly different. So I've been with Freya for a while now. Like coming up to 12 years.
Yeah.
And so I was with her before I discovered mental health, or knew what that was and stuff. So she's kind of been there through the whole journey. So she's seen me at my lowest points,
and she's still here,
seen me at the highest points. And so that's almost, to me, that gives me like that I can't hide anything really, because she's seen it all. So but that is really nice and reassuring, and it's just like at home now, obviously we live together, just can totally be authentic at home, don't have to hide anything, and she'll spot it. Even if I tried to hide something, she'll spot it out. If I start like working late in the evenings, or doing weekend, like
putting the pressure on yourself,
she spots it out straight away. She's like, are you okay? Are you taking your medication? Like, so I'm still like sertraline, I'm on sertraline, so I have medication, and if I do kind of miss a couple of days or something, she'll be on me.
Yeah.
She's on me. This is where like her being a teacher, she goes proper teacher. Mate.
Yeah.
Have you had your?
And then you go, okay, all right.
Yeah, but then actually sometimes I
think you need that,
if I'm
don't you?
feeling that kind of uptight, I'm like, why do I feel like this? And then she's like, have you been having it? And I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it is.
In my lowest, I'd met my now wife at this time. In my lowest, which seems a bit odd to meet someone at your lowest, but I did. And I had started taking citalopram.
Yeah.
And that had so many adverse reactions with me. It just didn't sit right with me.
I think it's interesting how everyone's reactions are different to it.
Completely different.
And I've known people who with sertraline, and they're like, oh no,
it just doesn't work for me. Yeah, and because she was crew for BA at the time, and she had a Cape Town, and I thought, well, look, I've got my long service ticket here, so I went with her, and we went to Cape Town, and I remember on the flight, now this is completely medically wrong, any doctors out there, I'm really sorry, I just totally withdrew myself from it. I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. And I was so unwell from just completely cold turkey and off.
I guess going from
having that
all to nothing,
nothing.
rather than coming off. So
So, but we climbed up Table Mountain, and that was probably the first time in a long time that I'd felt free and felt so like, I can breathe. Like I describe to people sometimes with anxiety, depression, it's like someone's got hold of you from the back and just squeezing you and squeezing your head, and you just like,
sometimes the pressure headaches. Sometimes
migraines.
But no, it's interesting what you say about the feeling free and feeling, because I think, or what I find, and I do notice it. I think, I mean, it's definitely beneficial for me but I feel with the medication, it kind of it reduces the lows, but it reduces the highs as well sometimes.
Yeah, it sits you in the middle.
It sits you in the middle, so it never to. I mean, it's something that actually football managers sometimes say. I mean, Gareth Ainsworth says it a lot. Now no longer at Wycombe, obviously, but he would say never too high, never too low.
Yeah.
And that's what I relate when I'm on the medication. It's kind of, maybe I don't feel those utter euphoric, joyous moments, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to take to not feel the lows that I have been before. And so it is kind of just like numbs you a little bit. And that's why I think some people really don't like them, because they're like, or you've said there about feeling free, it's like, you notice it sometimes. I'm like, would be doing something that previously had given me so much excitement and energy, and I'm a bit like, well, I'm enjoying it, I'm happy to be here, but I'm not getting that buzz. But then I'm
not enjoying it by being a wreck. Yeah,
exactly. It's interesting, and it's again, there's something that's different for everyone, but that's where, as you say, you want to find what's right for you. It's kind of that you've got to talk, and it's recognizing when you might need that help, which is the difficult bit. I think that's the hardest bit. That's
it. I mean, that was we were talking just before we started filming this. I found, and this circles nicely back to the coffee thing. Me getting into coffee was, whilst I was in my previous marriage, realised that it weren't working, and and the abuse that was going on. I bought a bike, a road bike, and my mate was well into his cycling, and I thought, right, I need to lose a bit of weight. I've clearly, I need to put myself through the ringer. I want to see if I can handle this by knackering myself out to the point that I can't think about anything other than, I'm knackered. And those gains of climbing Leaf Hill or climbing Box Hill, doing multiple circuits of Box Hill and going, oh my God, I've cycled 40, 50 miles today. And from that, went into coffee shops. Giro in Esher, one hell of a coffee shop. It's quite a long way from here, but that was a great stop that I used to do from Richmond Park through to Box Hill. I think I look forward to that more than anything. And I remember watching them making the coffee, and I'm like, I want to try that. So then fast forward a few years, and unfortunately the person I was with wasn't very good like that, and wouldn't have let me get the Barista Express. So I've got one, and my wife's like, hang on, I'm getting specialty coffee every day. It might not be particularly great, but I'm getting coffee every morning. I'm like, oh, there you are.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. No, that's amazing. And I think, it's something that touched on in the previous episode and for myself. It was something that it's the process of coffee, it's the brewing it, it gives you kind of, that, or for me, if I'm, it can take my mind away from other things.
It's a little moment out in your day.
Yeah, taking time for yourself, and that's why I say self-care. Like it is an act of self-care, and it's that's when I notice I'm maybe overworking and too busy. So when I'm not making coffees, I haven't made as much as I would like to recently, and so my latte art is going to be a bit shaky. We might have a few pours after this or whatever.
Mine.
but yeah, so it's and then like we touched on with the coffee, like the community around it.
It's amazing.
And I don't know whether it's just the people that maybe I connect to, or because of the nature of my page, are drawn to my page. But it feels like there's a lot of people in that space, and it's probably every space. The coffee community is just like a microcosm of society.
Yeah.
There's people who actually want, when you show a little bit of vulnerability, when you speak a little bit about something, people kind of feel permission that they can, or they feel comfortable to. And that's one of the things I have to say from the Carol Cappuccino page that I found the most rewarding, is people saying that, maybe people I used to go to school with, or even just people I don't know, connecting and saying, oh, I really appreciate what you're doing with this. And that's, that's really cool. Just if one person hears any of the conversations and feels something, then that's amazing. And that's what kind of it's about now.
I remember you putting a poem out. How long ago was
spoken
that?
word. Yeah, it was...
it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah,
it was before London Coffee Festival.
It was, yeah.
I'm sure it was.
Because I remember we were on a family holiday there when I was doing it. I remember because being away on holiday gave me the headspace to, okay, I'm not working.
Yeah, I can jot down what I feel. And I remember specifically, because you read it out, and I thought, that must have been really hard for Hans to do that. Yeah. That must have been really, really, because you're exposing yourself. Yeah. It's raw. It's like a wound, and it's like, oh, he's got this, and there's no going back. Once it's out there,
And I think I feel a little bit similar with some of the podcasts and the conversation, or even yesterday, the first two going out, and I'm like, well, that's it now. They're out there, because it's
in the domain.
But at the same time, quite freeing, because I'm like, a bit like when I said about the page is almost a release for me, and like a journal. Like, I'm not sitting with it now; it's out there, and however it's taken or received, it's not really important to me. What's important to me is that the people who come on feel we have a good conversation. I connect with people a bit more. I learn myself, and but no, that spoken word. It was, and I haven't actually done any since. But it just felt I obviously needed to get something off my chest. It was obviously at the time it was therapeutic for me, and actually a friend helped me kind of. I kind of sent it through to her. She does spoken word and singing herself. So that's Emma, and she kind of gave me maybe the confidence to do it.
It's amazing.
And it felt good to do and like record and I might after this I might go back and watch it again and see what I did. So I can't quite remember. I remember talking about self-induced pressure creates self-induced chains that bind me to the self-induced pain. That's the bit that I remember. I think that was the line I was happiest with. Yeah. And that relates so much to myself. It's self-induced. A bit like with anxiety, where you say you're worrying about things you can't control, and you.
That's it. It's just like a runaway train. It's just unstoppable.
Yeah.
It's you mentioned journaling, and it's I'll get there. My middle daughter Lilia, she had quite a tricky birth. She had quite a lot of illnesses when she was first born. She took under the care of Great Ormond Street. So I spent a lot of time in Great Ormond Street, and it was one particular nurse, I can't remember her name. I spoke to her about it, and I must have looked like I was in trouble. And she said, "You're lost in the mire that is your mind." And I said, "How do you know?" She went, "Because you're like a cup of water. Your cup is full, but you're emptying that cup for your daughter. You need to leave some for yourself, because you're not going to be able to help her anymore." And it was a lot of blood tests, a lot of specialist appointments, a lot of back and forward to London. I lived in Twickenham at the time. And I was so touched by that. When I got into the cycling, I thought, I want to give back. So I'd done a few things, fundraising for for Great Ormond Street, and I'd done the Ride London, which is like the London Marathon of cycling. Big event, and I got hold of Great Ormond Street and I said, look, I'm doing the Ride London. I want to fundraise for you. And they were like, right, we're going to send you fundraising stuff. They sent me a jersey to do it in. After the event, they were like, you can get some food and a massage. They rented out some massive building on the Mall. I think it was the Contemporary Arts something. I can't remember. But it was amazing. There's like, they locked your bikes up and you had a massage and all this. And it weren't just like there you go, mate, off you pop. It was like a full half an hour, loads of food, some celebs and that were there. But I just felt like I was giving back, and I thought, hang on a minute, I'm probably spending all the money that I've just raised for you. I can't remember, it's over £3,000. And then I've done the London to Brighton Forum as well. But I remember specifically the whole time that I was in Great Ormond Street, they were always conscious about the parent. They were always conscious about what you were going through. And it was like they were talking, like I was the patient, not my daughter, and they were unbelievable.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think because, I mean, before working in football, I worked at Cancer Research UK, and it's a big thing in kind of cancer. It's horrible. People who are going through it, but it's the families and those who feel they need to be there for them. And we interacted with them a lot because you mentioned like kind of fundraising. I used to work in like supporter engagement team, so it would have been the person sending out the jersey or I done that, and that was incredible at the time. But no, I feel like we've covered a lot. I feel like we have covered a lot, and I've really enjoyed the conversation myself. I feel like we've I knew we had some things in common, but I feel like there's a lot more than maybe I realised, especially with the kind of I was just saying about like kind of the family things and father figures and things like that. So no, it's been great, and I want to just finish off with a question. You've seen the Alex episode, so you might know what's coming. And I have to admit, I haven't actually asked every guest this, so but I feel like I want to come back, spin back around to it. But I feel like I've ended every episode with a question, and so I want to ask the same one to you. What is happiness to you?
This is when I watched that Alex episode. This is exactly what came into my mind there, so I've stored it. So happiness for me, it's family, love, mindfulness, self-care, and Reading when they win. So it's amazing. Not been happy with that for a while, but no, those joking aside, those four things are the things that make me happy.
Amazing. And knowing that, and that's where you prioritise, and even going right back to what you said about the job, and then when the little one is feeding those four things, everything else will look after itself, like you say.
Absolutely.
Amazing. No, thanks, Rob.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's all right. No worries at all. Cheers. Thank you so much for tuning in to this latest episode of Flat Whites and Insights, and I really hope you gained something from that conversation. I know I certainly did. It would mean a lot if you can like and subscribe on whatever platform you may be watching or listening on, but also if you head over to Instagram and give me a follow at Cappuccino. This is the best place to contact me, but also see the latest developments on the platform as we look to increase awareness of mental health through my passions for coffee and football. In addition, if you've heard something that you can relate to or you want to talk about a little bit more, feel free to message me on that platform. But also, if you fancy coming on yourself and having a conversation, then do let me know, because I'm always keen to connect with new people and get insights into other areas and other passions and other challenges that I might have no experience of myself. Thanks again, and I really hope you tune in for the next episode. Take care of yourselves. I've been Hans. Thank you.